Hi and welcome back to the Stellium Astrology podcast. I'm Stephanie James and currently discussing the elements. Now, before I get into the elements, I just wanted to share some lovely reviews that I've got on iTunes. So I just wanted to say thank you to Listharda, I think, who said, I've been following Stellium Astrology for several years and I'm really looking forward to hearing the podcasts. So this was like my first review. Stephanie's a really genuine and passionate astrologer and her chart readings and horoscopes are always spot on. Thank you, Listharda. That's really kind 5-star review there. And I've got a review from, it's a load of numbers, unfortunately. I don't know who left this review for me. So enlightening and informative, has everything I would want to know and more. I look forward to regular episodes to listen to. Well, I'm knocking them out, so I hope you're enjoying. And now I've got one from Merap R, which says, yes! 5 stars. Oh, so excited for this podcast. SA is highly knowledgeable about astrology and I can't wait to hear her nuggets of wisdom. Thank you very much. Very kind words. I told you I'd give you a shout out, so thank you so much to Mepap and to 8878, whoever you are, and Listharda. Thank you so much for your lovely reviews. Back to the topic of the elements, and today we're talking about air signs. And I just wanted to, if you haven't already checked in with previous episodes, remind you to go back and have a little listen because there's quite a lot of good information there. But with the air signs, just generally, actually with the elements, I just wanted to remind you that to find the elements, all you have to do is divide the circle by 3 equally, an equilateral triangle on top of a circle, and the points of the triangle will be where you find the related elements. So placing one tip of the triangle onto Gemini, then the other 2 tips of the triangles will be on Aquarius and Libra, the other 2 air signs. And like I said before, there's a sense of natural ease and aptitude and compatibility between the signs, and it's known as that they kind of flow very easily within each other. So if you have any air in your chart, and you know other people who have air in their charts as well, you're probably going to have a very comfortable and easy communication with those people, and a kind of a sense of kinship with them, where you kind of, are able to just relate to them in an easier way. And a good book for the elements for you to delve into is Astrology, Psychology and the 4 Elements by Stephen Arroyo. I'll add that to my books pages on my website, and I'll also include a link in the description. So really, like I said, with the other elements, it's the basic way of perceiving and processing stimuli, and our impulses and urges, and kind of like our needs. It's also kind of what motivates us and what drives us, like our type of energy. So with air, it's kind of like this urge to label things and to communicate whatever it is that you've found, and kind of also to establish what something is. So it's a little bit investigative, and it's, labelling things, trying to define and categorise and tell people about it. So once they know what it is they're trying to describe, they want to then share it with people. So if you want to get into air a little bit, and like I said before, I like to try and imagine, almost meditate on the element really. So if you think about air, air can be quite hot, it can be quite warm, it can be stifling, it can be cool, it can be icy, it can be refreshing, it can be awakening. It can have an impact on you as you literally walk out the front door. So if you imagine you've had your central heating on indoors and you open the front door and it's actually really icy outside, that wall of ice can hit you. And in a similar way, you can be sitting in an air-conditioned car. I was just talking about this the other day with somebody and saying how I went to Spain, and getting in an air-conditioned car, I'd be freezing because I'd be wearing like really summery clothes, and I'd open the window to let some heat in and it would be like a wall of heat literally slapping me in the face. So air can have a real impact on you even though you can't see it. And it circulates, and you can think about air being recycled through air conditioning units. So you can have a sense of like recycled air, which can be quite refreshing but doesn't necessarily have that fresh punch. It can be quite stale at times. Having air flowing through a property, so opening the front door and the back door, it can be quite powerful in the sense it can really draw through. You can get a draft that comes all the way through the house and it can pull things with it. It can actually slam doors. and windows, and having airflow through and having fresh air in a property can really make it feel like a completely different place. It can bring things to life. If you think about a baby when it's born, that slap on the bum instigates that need to scream or cry, and so it can really clear the mucus from the airways just by giving it that initial slap. And that initial scream or cry is a relief to everybody in the delivery room, because they know that that baby is able to breathe independently. So there's a lot. Air does a lot for us, and really, if you think about the whole process of birth and everything that happens, air is one of the first signs that we know that everything's okay. It's kind of recognizing that there's life inside that being, and air can be kind of the life of imagination or of ideas. So it's quite it's important in life. Obviously, we couldn't live without oxygen. It also, you can have somebody bringing that same element of freshness. When you say you have someone look over a document with a fresh pair of eyes, they can spot errors and bring new ideas and perspectives to your ideas. Air can blow really hard, it can spiral like a twist or a hurricane, and it can be still and it can be calm like the eye of the storm. It can inspire, and it can bring with it new ideas, new events, but also it can be destructive and it can tear things down. If you've ever seen on the news where a hurricane or particularly a twister has gone through that hurricane belt, or the tornado belt in America, that literally tears properties down, and from literally in a split second you've got this lots of properties, and suddenly it's just piles of rubble. And with air you can be blown away, and you can be refreshed with air. And actually I quite like for Gemini, you can have your mind blown with these new ideas. With Libra, you can be swept off your feet with somebody else, and often with Libra, with relationships, there's this kind of idea of what you can be with another person, or what another person can teach you, or you can learn about yourself in this exchange with other people. Air is a great exchange. And just to really touch on the basics here, air is a masculine sign. Like I said, doesn't mean it's male and it's a man and all air signs are men. It's just that there's that masculine quality about air, which is a sort of conscious and considered attack, and it's kind of extroverted and externalized. And then you've got this kind of yang consciousness about air. So it's very I like to think of the air and the fire signs as quite demonstrative and quite out there. And there's an element of confidence, because when you're asserting yourself or being extroverted, there is an element of putting yourself out there and being, not necessarily having faith in yourself, but having confidence in where you're coming from, I suppose. So the essence of air is to really go out there and to share ideas and to create debate. And the air signs are Gemini, Libra and Aquarius, if I hadn't already touched on that. And these signs really are focused on interaction, the exchange of ideas. And there's obviously with air, to create sound, speech and music, it's entirely dependent on air, but you do need like a sense of vibration or frequency within that. Air likes to inform everybody. It likes to spread the message. It likes to communicate. It generally has good social skills, because air signs are able to see other perspectives, have their own perspective, but see other perspectives. And, they're also able generally to keep things in proportion, whereas fire signs might blow things way out of proportion. It's very interaction based, and, like fields like, counselling, which are basically based around talking and conversation, and having that interaction, helping interactions. And then there's, the need for variety with air, and like keeping it fresh and changing things up. And travel as well is associated with air signs. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to travel everywhere all the time. It can just be, a journey of the mind, storytelling, and that kind of sense of adventure in a story sense, or actually in a literal sense, going on a kind of journey of discovery. And yes, there's a lot of focus on dialogue, a real thirst for knowledge, and they can be rational and objective. And it's that kind of thing where air signs, you don't have to agree with another person, but you can understand where they're coming from. So a type of empathy, because you don't have to have been through something, but you can put yourself in that place and think about when you have experienced something like that and empathise with that person. But it doesn't necessarily have to be empathy. It can just be considering an alternative perspective, or a perspective that is opposite to your own. They can be very fair and rational and logical. And there's a kind of sense of law about air signs. Also, air signs can lean towards, if there's a lot of air in the chart, being very heady, overly theoretical. They can be scattered and anxious, and a little bit too much trapped in the head, struggling with grounding things. So there's somebody that I used to work with would say that they're a blue sky thinker. She is an Aquarius, and she's a blue sky thinker, she describes herself as. And she liked working with me because I was able to be her anchor. And I'm an earth sign. My sun is in Capricorn, so she's a blue sky thinker, and she liked the anchor, the earthy people, because they were helping her anchor her ideas and her visions for how she wanted things done. And it was a really nice image for me to think about, that blue sky thinking, which Aquarius can be very good at coming up with ideas and conceptualising and thinking about what contingencies we might need if something comes up and there's an issue. But then the practical earth signs are able to say, right, now let's go and apply this and actually create procedures and let's create processes. So that's quite a nice way that air and earth can work together. It can be that air signs can be overly logic, overly rational, and it can be logic over empathy sometimes. Like I said, they can think about how the other person might feel, but it may be that they could be out of touch with even being able to relate to how the other person feels. They understand what they're going through, but they don't empathise with it. So you can say, well, yes, I know you're upset. I get that this is an upsetting thing, but we do need to rationalise, and sometimes people do need that space to process as well. So it can be a little bit robotic, a little bit too efficient in its processing of the theory behind emotional situations or practical situations, without actually getting into the practice or getting into the feeling of things. It is a case of like theory over practice. So if you've ever heard somebody say, oh, I've passed my driving test, but actually the real practice you really start to learn when you actually start driving. And it's kind of like, you can tick all the boxes with the exams, you can have all of the qualifications on paper, but when it comes to actually applying yourself to real life situations, you can have all the air, but you don't necessarily have the earth that actually anchors it down. So it's an interesting one because it is very ideas orientated, it's very conceptual, and can be abstract at times. So really what makes logical sense doesn't always make emotional sense or practical sense. So things like think tanks and things like that, it's very trying to make sense of things in a ideas kind of situation, meetings, getting fired up with that conversation and then going away, and then it's like, now you've got to apply it. So lacking air, people can overcompensate sometimes with their intellect. Like they might want to appear to be extremely intelligent. They may lack the confidence in their intellectual ability as well. And being kind of like a bigger picture kind of person with air and thinking ahead, if you're lacking in air, it may be difficult to grasp that. And it may be difficult cooperating and compromising sometimes with other people. And it may be that, if you lack in air, you may be a little bit unreasonable. Or maybe people have told you that, but you can't quite see it. There's also, yes, like I said, there can be anxiety with air signs. and maybe with people that lack air, there can be, and meeting new people, there can be a sense of anxiety in meeting others. And again, a kind of pessimism, not always able to see the positive. It can be a little bit doom and gloom. There can be some real lack of ability to apply oneself intellectually, or I say academically, everybody's different. But yeah, there's not always an ability to apply oneself in the realm of ideas and processing of information. It can be a struggle sometimes. So that's just a little look at some of the ideas around air signs. And I've picked out a couple of charts to look at. Let's have a look at who I've chosen today. We've got Caris here, and Caris is from Carshalton. And Caris has 1, 2, 3 planets in air, but also her midheaven, her career point, and she also has Chiron there as well. And so she has lots of planets in air. To have the Sun, Venus and Mercury up there and a really high point in the chart. And Caris is, so she's a Gemini, and she's got all of that stuff going on in Gemini. And Caris is somebody who tends to learn or teach people for a living. So she is a teacher, because it's all sitting up around her 9th and 10th house. But she teaches people how to speak different languages. So Caris is fluent in Portuguese as well as English, and she can speak Spanish as well, but it's not her. It's Portuguese is the thing that she's much more fluent with. And I believe she can speak some other languages as well. But the other thing that's interesting about Caris is that she's taught English as a second language when she's lived abroad. And Caris is somebody who has always gone travelling, and she's travelled all over the world. But, you know, she didn't think twice when she decided she wanted to be a sound therapist. She didn't think twice about booking a course with a sound therapy teacher in Cornwall, which is miles away, hours away from where she actually lives in London. And she's, so like I said, she's a sound therapist. She works with frequencies, she works with the voice, the different pitches and the different ranges, and how the different frequencies can perhaps unlock blockages. I'm not an expert in sound therapy. I'm sure Caris is sitting there shaking her head going, no, you've got it all wrong. But my understanding, and from having a treatment myself with Caris, is that there is an element of using frequencies in order to create flow within the body. And, she's a believer in, using the voice and using frequency as a way of freeing up energy blockages. And she is also a musician and a singer. I know she can play instruments, but her voice is her instrument, and she is literally a songbird. And she does sound therapy. She's a yoga teacher, and she's teaches English as a second language. She I could get into the whole Gemini aspect of her life. I won't, because I think Caris is a great mutable chart, and we'll be talking about Caris again when we talk about the mutable signs. But yes, Caris is a very airy person, loves conversation, sharing ideas, and a very knowledgeable person. Somebody else who we've got some air in their chart is one of my subscribers. I think I'm pronouncing the name right. Is Gowrie. And Gowrie signed up to the mailing list and sent me their chart details. So I'm looking at their chart now. Now, Gowrie has Gemini rising and has moon and midheaven in Aquarius. So that's 2 placements in air signs. And also has Pluto in Libra, like a whole generation of people. Like I said, Pluto moves really, really, really slowly. And Pluto is the only planet in Libra in there. So we wouldn't look too much at that, because it's a generational thing. We would look at it, obviously, if there was going to be transits there. But actually, as far as natal interpretation goes, or looking at the elements at least, it's not the most heavily weighted chart towards air. There's definitely more water in this chart, but I thought it was interesting to look at the fact that we do have an air rising, and we also have an Aquarius moon. And again, like Aquarius is quite conceptual, very community driven, and sharing ideas around a subject that they've decided that they want to focus on. and they're very much interested in that kind of exchange with like-minded people. Whereas Gemini might not care too much if you're like-minded. They're more interested in hearing different perspectives and understanding things from a completely different point of view. That's why Gemini is represented by the twins, because the twins actually are not carbon copies of each other in an intellectual sense. They actually have their own minds and freedom of thought. So that's a nice complement to the rising sign and the moon, that kind of sharing of ideas. And actually your moon is trine your ascendant, meaning that actually your moon and ascendant are almost exactly 120 degrees apart, almost exactly one side of the triangle apart. So it's a really nice flow, and it probably gives you a very nice ease of communication with the people that you meet. People probably find you very interesting and very curious naturally, and probably find you to be a very natural communicator. But with all that water going on in Scorpio in your chart, you're probably likely to be perceived as very deep and getting into very deep, intense conversations, and the subjects that other people might struggle to approach, you don't tend to struggle with that too much. And actually you probably make it easier and more accessible for people to be able to talk about more difficult things, because you open up that dialogue. Now, I just really want to get on to talking about just a couple of celebrity charts. So my Gemini chart that I chose, because I thought it'd be good to look at a specific Gemini. So I've picked Bob Dylan, and Bob Dylan has got Sun and Venus and Mercury all in Gemini. And Bob Dylan is known for playing guitar, and he's fingerpicky style. So it's not just like strumming the strings and chords. It's like literally playing really intricate songs, and really being able to operate both hands independently while singing at the same time. And what's great about Bob Dylan is not only is he great at guitar, but the songs that he comes up with are so very he's kind of more of like a social commentator, an abstract social commentator, whose lyrics, whether you like him or not, it's worth listening to Bob Dylan. I will definitely be talking about his chart again at some point, because Bob Dylan has an amazing chart. He's got a lot of mutability, he's got a lot of fixity in his chart, and he's quite airy. So it's definitely a very interesting chart to look at. But yeah, Bob is a musician. He's known for basically being a poet. He packed his guitar up, and I can't even remember how much money he said he had. I think he said at the time he had about $10 in his pocket, and he travelled. Where did he go? Did he go to the New Orleans or something? I can't remember where he went, but he went somewhere where he just basically was going to go and put himself out there and just start performing. And Bob Dylan became respected and well known for being a musician and being a songwriter, a wordsmith basically, because Bob Dylan is a wordsmith and a very talented musician. Whether or not you like the music, you have to give him credit for the fact he's talented at writing lyrics and writing songs. And he was described as the voice of a generation. He basically was the mouthpiece of his generation, and he spoke about some incredibly challenging and difficult times that humanity went through. So he's a really interesting chart to look at as far as air is concerned. Another person who I chose who's got a lot of air is Kate Winslet. She's got Sun, Moon, Mercury and Pluto all bundled together in Libra. And Kate Winslet, also there are some questions over her birth time. The time we have for her isn't necessarily accurate. I think that the initial time we've got for her is considered double D, so that's dirty data. But we are in thinking that possibly she has a Libra ascendant as well. I think that the idea of where her ascendant came from was Jonathan Kahner's website. I'm reading this on Astro Databank, and it said on Jonathan Kahner's website it gives a time of 7:15 a.m. And it's also been given on IMDb, but it's unverified. So she has got Sun rising in her chart, and she's another great one that we'll probably talk about again. But having Libra rising and, having lots of planets in Libra lends towards being somebody who's quite likeable and quite charming. I believe Bill Clinton also has a lot of stuff going on in Libra. I know he's actually featured in Frank's Get to the Heart of Your Chart book, which I've got right next to me. And there is a charm about these Librans and an attractiveness that you can't deny. But they're also considered to be quite fair, and they are very focused on other people and very interested in the exchange with others, as all the air signs are. But Libra is much more relationship focused and learns a lot about themselves through relationships. And actually, Kate, she's done a lot of different films, but she's very well known for being in Titanic, and that was very much based around a relationship. And also Libra can be, and Venus is about beauty, but Libra can be, as it's a Venus ruled sign, very focused on beauty as well. And Kate was known to say, I don't want my photographs airbrushed. This is who I am. This is what I look like. And, accept me for that. Accept me for the way that I look. So it's interesting that she's very much Sun rising in Libra, if that is her correct birth time. But Sun, Moon and Mercury. And she was talking about beauty, ideals in beauty. And Pluto there too. So, that's a stellium in Libra. So Bob is a stellium in Gemini. Kate is a stellium in Libra. And now I've picked you a stellium in Aquarius. And he immediately sprang to mind for me. And it's Eddie Izzard. And the reason I chose Eddie Izzard is because he embodies that Aquarian uniqueness. And he's such an airy person. He's got Sun. Oh gosh, I'm gonna have to zoom in on his chart. Sun, Jupiter, Venus, Mercury, Saturn, and Mars, all in Aquarius. So many planets in Aquarius, and he also has Gemini on the midheaven. So we don't necessarily look at the midheaven as a point where we're going to look at elemental lacks or anything like that. But actually, as far as Eddie is concerned, we have got a lot heavy weighting in air, and particularly in Aquarius. And Eddie is a heterosexual transvestite. Have I got that right? Oh gosh, now I've come out of his description on Astro Databank. Yes, heterosexual male transvestite stand-up comedian, actor and entertainer. Now, a comedy is very airy, because it's being very quick and very, like, there's a storytelling element to comedy, but there's also kind of like about the ability to just come up with like one-liners. But what's really interesting and unique about Eddie Izzard, and I would encourage you to go and to find a video of his online, and just watch him do his stand-up routine. I can't remember which one in particular I'm thinking of. I think it was in San Francisco, and I can't remember the name of the DVD that I watched. But he doesn't subscribe to a particular, sort of social convention. So he will quite happily go on stage wearing makeup and high heels and a dress, because that's what he feels like doing. It's, very detached. When I was talking about there can be a detachment from the body with air signs. And so there's this kind of detachment from, social convention and gender ideals, actually, even, and gender roles, gender assignments. But also what was great about him was actually that he can slip between languages in his stand-up routine. He's fluent in French, and he literally switches over from speaking English into French and is still making the audience laugh, even though some of them don't even understand what he's talking about. It's that gift with language and that ability to communicate it in such a way that people just connect with it. So Eddie Izzard is a great one, and actually he's really become quite into politics over recent years, and has a lot of people very interested in following him, because he's quite, I think he was going to go for Labour in the UK, and actually Labour is a lot more of a liberal, has more liberal ideals now than perhaps it used to. It's not quite as far left as the Liberal Party might be seen, the Liberal Democrats, but actually air signs can be seen to lean towards equality and and having an idea of how things should be done, and so they want to promote that idea. So that was a really interesting chart to look at as well. So if you're enjoying this podcast, please subscribe, rate and review it on iTunes, and share it with somebody who might like it, especially if they are an air sign. And yeah, if you want to have your chart featured, if you'd like me to have a little look and find areas where we can share information about your chart, then just subscribe to my mailing list and fill out the form. And that's about it for today. So thank you very much. I've enjoyed talking about air. And actually, perhaps I didn't share with you all, but I have a stellium in air as well, which is why I can waffle on for ages. And I have a Gemini ascendant as well, so I've got a lot of air in my chart. I've got, perhaps a little too much air. So thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll speak to you next time. Bye now.